Why can't you just be normal, Jolene? Mom's voice sliced through the air, her eyes narrowed with disgust. You're just like Ethan, always questioning, always complicating things. I froze, my hand hovering over the doorknob. The hallway suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. I should have been used to this by now, but each barb still stung like the first time. I'm sorry, I mumbled, not sure what I was apologizing for this time. Existing, probably. Mom huffed, smoothing her designer dress. Just go to your room. And for God's sake, change out of those ratty jeans before Grant gets home. I nodded, retreating to my sanctuary. As I closed the door, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. Lanky, awkward, with unruly curls that refused to be tamed. Everything about me seemed to offend Mom's sensibilities. My name is Jolene, and I'm pretty sure I'm the biggest disappointment in my mother's life. I flopped onto my bed, staring at the ceiling. The sounds of Mom's frantic cleaning drifted up from downstairs. Another dinner party, another chance for her to show off her perfect life to her perfect friends. A soft knock interrupted my brooding. Joe? You okay, kiddo? Dad. Well, Ethan. My real dad, the one who actually gave a damn about me. I opened the door, relief washing over me at the sight of his kind eyes and lopsided grin. Hey, Dad. He pulled me into a bear hug, and for a moment I felt safe. Your mom giving you a hard time again? I shrugged, not wanting to get into it. It's fine. I'm used to it. Dad's face darkened. You shouldn't have to be. We both knew the score. Mom had left Dad for Grant, trading in our cozy apartment for this McMansion and a shot at social climbing. I was just collateral damage in her grand plan. Listen, Dad said, his voice low. I've got something for you. He pulled out a small, wrapped package from his jacket pocket. I unwrapped it carefully, revealing a delicate silver locket. Inside was a photo of us, laughing at some long-forgotten joke. So you always remember who you really are, Dad said, his voice thick with emotion. I clutched the locket, fighting back tears. In that moment, I made a silent vow. One day, I'd break free from this gilded cage. One day, I'd show them all what Jolene was really made of. And maybe, just maybe, I'd make them regret ever trying to change me. The morning sickness hit Nina like a freight train, and suddenly, our entire world revolved around her pregnancy. I stood in the doorway of my room, watching as Grant fussed over her, his eyes gleaming with pride. We'll need to convert the guest room into a nursery, Nina announced, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. Jolene, sweetie, you don't mind moving to the smaller room upstairs, do you? It wasn't really a question. I forced a smile, knowing my opinion didn't matter.
Sure, Mom.
Whatever you need. Grant nodded approvingly. That's my girl. Always so accommodating. I bit back a bitter laugh. Accommodating.
Right.
More like invisible. Over the next few weeks, I watched as my life was systematically dismantled. My posters were taken down, my books packed away. The room that had been my sanctuary was transformed into a pastel paradise for the baby that would replace me. Isn't it beautiful? Nina gushed, showing off the nursery to her friends. I hovered in the background, a ghost in my own home. One of the women noticed me. Oh, Jolene. You must be so excited to be a big sister. I mumbled something noncommittal, but Nina jumped in. She's thrilled, aren't you, darling? Jolene's always been such a helpful girl. The lie burned in my throat. I excused myself, fleeing to my new room, if you could call it that. It was barely bigger than a closet, with a sloped ceiling that made me feel like the walls were closing in. I sat on the narrow bed, clutching the locket Dad had given me. Tears threatened to spill over, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. A soft knock interrupted my brooding.
Joe.
It was Dad, his voice laced with concern. Can I come in? I opened the door, relief washing over me at the sight of his familiar face. He took in the cramped space, his jaw tightening. Oh, kiddo, he sighed. It's fine. I lied, not meeting his eyes. I don't need much space anyway. Dad pulled me into a hug, and for a moment, I let myself be comforted. You know you always have a place with me, right? He whispered. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. But even as I clung to him, I knew the truth. This house, this family, they were moving on without me. And no matter how hard I tried, I would never truly belong. Margot's arrival turned our house into a circus, with Nina and Grant fawning over her every coo and gurgle. I tried to be the doting big sister, but my efforts were met with suspicion and criticism. Careful, Jolene. Nina snapped as I cradled Margot. Support her head properly. Honestly, don't you know anything? I bit my lip, fighting back tears. I'm trying, Mom. Grant intervened, his voice patronizing. Maybe it's best if you let Nina handle the baby, sweetheart. Why don't you go study, or something? Dismissed again. I retreated to my tiny room. The sounds of laughter and cooing drifted up the stairs, a stark reminder of my outsider status. Weeks passed, and I threw myself into my schoolwork, desperate for some form of validation. When my report card came, I was ecstatic. Straight A's and a glowing note from my teacher about my potential. Heart pounding, I showed it to Nina. Mom, look. I got all A's. She glanced at it, distracted by Margot's fussing. That's nice, dear. Could you fetch me a clean diaper? My excitement deflated like a punctured balloon. But Mom, didn't you hear me? All A's.
Nina sighed, exasperated.
Yes, Jolene, I heard you. What do you want? A parade. Now, the diaper, please. I handed her the diaper, my report card crumpling in my fist. As I turned to leave, I heard her cooing to Margot. You're going to be so much smarter than your big sister, aren't you? Yes, you are. The words cut deep, confirming what I'd long suspected. No matter what I achieved, it would never be enough. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The locket Dad gave me felt heavy against my chest. I opened it, tracing the photo of us laughing together. What I wouldn't give to feel that carefree again. A soft knock interrupted my brooding. It was Dad, his eyes full of concern. Hey, kiddo. Heard about your report card. That's amazing, Joe. I'm so proud of you. His words were a balm to my wounded spirit. I showed him the crumpled card, and he beamed. This calls for a celebration. How about ice cream? My treat. As we snuck out for our secret ice cream run, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I couldn't change Nina, or make her love me the way she loved Margot. But I had Dad and his unwavering support. For now, that would have to be enough. But deep down, a seed of determination took root. One day, I'd prove my worth, not just to Nina, but to myself. And when that day came, no one would be able to dismiss me ever again. The tension in the house had become unbearable. Every glance, every sigh from Nina felt like an accusation. I tried to make myself smaller, invisible, but it never seemed to be enough. One evening, I overheard Nina and Grant talking in hushed tones. We can't keep doing this, Nina, Grant said, his voice strained. The market's been tough, and with Margot's private school tuition, Nina's response was sharp. What are you suggesting? We can't cut back on Margot's education. She deserves the best. There was a heavy pause before Grant spoke again. Maybe it's time Jolene went to live with Ethan full-time. My heart stopped. I pressed myself against the wall, straining to hear Nina's response. You're right, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. It would be better for everyone. Jolene's never really fit in here anyway. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back to my room, choking back sobs.
They didn't want me.
They never had. The next morning, Nina cornered me in the kitchen. Jolene, we need to talk. I braced myself, knowing what was coming. Your father and I have been discussing your living situation, she began, her voice falsely cheerful. We think it might be best if you went to live with Ethan permanently. You'd have more space there, and it would be easier for everyone. I nodded numbly, unable to form words. Nina continued, oblivious to my pain. You understand, don't you, sweetie? With Margot's school expenses and the economy being what it is. It's just temporary, of course. The lie hung between us, heavy and suffocating. When? I managed to croak out. This weekend, Nina replied, already turning away. I'll help you pack. As I watched her walk away, something inside me hardened. This wasn't about money or space. This was about me being a constant reminder of a past Nina wanted to forget. I retreated to my room, clutching Dad's locket. With shaking hands, I dialed his number.
Dad.
My voice cracked. Can I come stay with you? For good. His response was immediate and warm. Of course, Joe. You're always welcome here. What happened? As I poured out the whole story, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. This was the end of something, yes. But maybe, just maybe, it could also be a beginning. That weekend, as I packed up my meager belongings, I made a silent vow. I would prove them all wrong. I would build a life so full and rich that Nina would regret ever letting me go. And one day, I'd look back on this moment not with pain, but with gratitude for the freedom it gave me. Living with Dad was like finally being able to breathe after years of suffocation. His small apartment became my sanctuary, a place where I could be myself without fear of judgment or criticism. You've got this, Joe, Dad said, beaming as I pored over my textbooks late into the night. I've never seen anyone work as hard as you do. His unwavering support fueled my determination. I threw myself into my studies with a fervor that surprised even me. Every A, every accolade became a silent rebuke to Nina and her dismissal of my potential. It was during my senior year that I met Gwen. She was everything I wasn't: outgoing, confident, effortlessly popular. But somehow we clicked. You're brilliant, you know that? Gwen said one day as we studied together. You just need to let the world see it. Her words sparked something in me. I started speaking up in class, joining clubs, pushing myself beyond my comfort zone. And people noticed. My guidance counselor, Mr. Reeves, called me into his office one afternoon. Jolene, have you considered applying for the Mercer Scholarship? It's highly competitive, but with your grades and extracurriculars, you've got a real shot.
The Mercer Scholarship.
Full ride to any university in the state. It was a pipe dream, but I couldn't shake the idea. I spent weeks crafting my application, pouring my heart into the essays. Dad proofread every draft, his pride evident in every encouraging word. The day the letter arrived, my hands shook so badly I could barely open the envelope. Dad stood nearby, tension radiating off him. Dear Ms. Walker, we're pleased to inform you. I couldn't read any further. The tears came in a flood, years of pent-up emotion finally breaking free. You did it, Joe. Dad whooped, pulling me into a bear hug. I knew you could. I always knew. That night, as I lay in bed, clutching the acceptance letter, I felt a shift inside me. This wasn't just a scholarship. It was validation. Proof that I was more than Nina's cast-off, more than the awkward girl who didn't fit. I thought about calling Nina, sharing the news. But the memory of her dismissal still stung. No, I decided. This victory was mine. I'd earned it without her, and I'd savor it without her too. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of anticipation I'd never known before. The future stretched out before me, full of possibility. For the first time in my life, I was truly excited to see what came next. Little did I know, life had more surprises in store, both triumphs and challenges that would test the strength I'd fought so hard to build. The call came on a Tuesday just as I was wrapping up a meeting with my team. Nina's name flashed on my phone screen, sending a jolt of anxiety through me. We hadn't spoken in years. Jolene. Her voice was hesitant, almost unrecognizable. I need a favor. I listened in stunned silence as she explained. Margot needed a place to stay while attending college nearby. Their finances were tight, and the dorms were too expensive. We thought, since you're doing so well. Nina trailed off, the implication hanging heavy between us. Part of me wanted to laugh. After years of rejection. Now they needed me? But another part, the part that still longed for connection, whispered that this might be a chance to mend bridges. I'll need to discuss it with Caleb, I said, my voice carefully neutral. I'll let you know. Caleb was supportive as always. It's your decision, Joe. But remember, you don't owe them anything. In the end, I agreed. Maybe it was hope, maybe it was a desire to prove I'd risen above the past. Whatever the reason, 2 weeks later, Margot arrived at our doorstep. She was beautiful, poised, every inch Nina's daughter. But there was something brittle about her smile, a hint of the insecurity I remembered all too well. "Thanks for this," Margot said, her tone casual as she surveyed our apartment. "Mom and Dad are being so dramatic about money lately. It's embarrassing, really." I bit back a retort, reminding myself to be patient. "We're happy to help. Let me show you to your room." The first few days were awkward, but manageable. Margot kept to herself, and I tried to give her space. But as the weeks wore on, tensions began to rise. She'd leave dishes in the sink, music blaring at all hours. Small things, but they grated on my nerves. Caleb urged patience, but I could see the strain in his eyes too. Then came the night I came home early to find Margot draped across Caleb on the couch, her hand on his arm, laughing at some private joke. They sprang apart when they saw me, Caleb's face a mask of guilt and confusion. "Joe, it's not," he began, but I was already turning away, my heart pounding. In that moment, all the old insecurities came rushing back. I wasn't enough. I'd never be enough. History was repeating itself, and once again, I was the one being left behind. As I locked myself in our bedroom, I could hear Margot's muffled voice, dripping with false concern. "Geez, what's her problem? We were just talking." I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The tension in our apartment was suffocating. Caleb's repeated assurances that nothing had happened with Margot did little to ease the knot in my stomach. I wanted to believe him, but years of insecurity weren't easily silenced. Margot, for her part, seemed to revel in the chaos she created. Her smug smiles and innocent touches whenever Caleb was around pushed me to my breaking point. "We need to talk," I said one evening, cornering Margot in the kitchen. "This isn't working out." She blinked, all wide-eyed innocence. "What do you mean? I thought we were getting along so well." "Cut the act, Margot," I snapped. "I want you out by the end of the week." Her facade crumbled, replaced by a sneer that was pure Nina. "You can't do that. Mom and Dad will be furious." "I don't care," I replied, surprised to find I meant it. "This is my home, and you've overstayed your welcome." Margot's eyes narrowed. "You're just jealous. Afraid Caleb might prefer someone younger, prettier. Someone who isn't damaged goods." Her words hit their mark, but I refused to let her see how much they stung. "Pack your bags, Margot. We're done here." I should have known it wouldn't be that simple. Within hours, my phone was buzzing with calls from Nina. "How dare you kick out your sister?" she raged when I finally answered. "After everything we've done for you." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Everything you've done for me? You mean abandoning me? Treating me like I was worthless?" "Don't be so dramatic, Jolene," Nina scoffed. "We gave you a roof over your head, didn't we? And now you can't even return the favor for your own sister." "Half-sister," I corrected, my voice ice-cold. "And Margot's behavior has been unacceptable. She's leaving. End of discussion." Nina's voice turned sickly sweet. "Now, Jolene, let's not be hasty. I'm sure we can work something out. Maybe if you reconsidered, we could mend fences, be a real family again." For a moment I wavered. The little girl inside me still yearned for her mother's approval. But then I thought of all the times I'd been pushed aside, made to feel less than. I thought of Caleb and the life we were building together. "No," I said firmly. "I'm done being manipulated. Margot leaves, or I'll have her removed. And Nina, don't call me again." As I hung up, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I'd stood up to Nina without flinching. I'd chosen my own happiness over her approval. Caleb found me in our bedroom, tears streaming down my face. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of freedom. "It's over," I told him, my voice steady. "I'm free." The autumn breeze carried the scent of fresh flowers as I walked down the aisle, my arm linked with Dad's. Caleb waited at the altar, his eyes shining with love and pride. This moment, this perfect slice of happiness, was all I'd ever wanted. Nina and Margot's absence was a dull ache, but it couldn't overshadow the joy surrounding me. Gwen, my maid of honor, beamed from her place beside the altar. Max, who'd become more than just a boss, sat in the front row, giving me a thumbs up. As Dad kissed my cheek and placed my hand in Caleb's, I felt a sense of completion. This was my family now, chosen, cherished, and built on mutual respect. The ceremony passed in a blur of tears and laughter. As Caleb and I shared our first dance, I caught sight of Dad, watching us with unabashed pride. He'd never let me down, never made me feel less than. In that moment, I realized that I'd always had the love I needed. I just hadn't recognized it. Weeks after the honeymoon, as Caleb and I settled into our new life, the call came. It was Gwen, her voice tight with concern. "Joe, have you seen the news? Grant's company. It's bankrupt. There are allegations of fraud. It's all over the papers." My heart raced as I hung up and searched online. There it was, Grant's face plastered across financial news sites, Nina standing grimly beside him outside a courthouse. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Jolene, it's Mom. We need to talk. It's urgent." I stared at the message, a whirlwind of emotions churning inside me. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let Nina face the consequences of her choices. But another part, the part that had grown stronger and more compassionate, felt a twinge of empathy. Caleb found me still staring at my phone. "Everything okay, love?" I showed him the message, explaining the situation. His brow furrowed with concern. "What are you going to do?" I took a deep breath, my hand unconsciously moving to my stomach where our child was growing. "I'm going to call her back. But I'm not going to let her manipulate me. Not anymore." Caleb squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, Joe. Whatever you decide, I'm here." As I dialed Nina's number, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. I was no longer that insecure girl desperate for approval. I was Jolene, strong, loved, and finally at peace with my past. Whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms. The cycle of hurt and manipulation ended with me. And as our child grew within me, I vowed to create a new legacy, one of love, acceptance, and unwavering support. The phone rang and I was ready. This was my story now, and I would write the ending.